A luxurious vacation, a glamorous girlfriend, and an unexpected encounter with the past. What happens when a millionaire comes face to face with his pregnant ex-wife and her mysterious companion? This is a tale of love, regret, and the secrets we carry. Welcome to the True Crime Studio, your destination for stories that intrigue and inspire. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join us for more unforgettable tales.
Liam Montgomery and Sophia sat on the terrace of the stunning island resort. This trip was meant to be their escape, a chance to reconnect after Liam's hectic work schedule had pulled them apart. Liam lifted his glass, a soft smile playing on his lips. "To us," he began, his eyes meeting hers. Sophia's eyes sparkled as she clinked her glass against his. "Finally," she whispered, her fingers lightly touching his hand. "Just us." They both took a sip, savoring the moment. Sophia leaned in slightly. "You know, I've been looking forward to this for so long." "Me too," Liam replied, his smile genuine. "I'm sorry I've been so caught up with work lately." She shook her head softly. "It's okay. You're here now, and that's all that matters." Just then, as Liam lowered his glass, something over Sophia's shoulder caught his eye. His gaze locked onto a figure across the terrace, and his breath hitched. It was Evelyn. She sat at a candlelit table, laughter dancing in her eyes as she chatted with a tall, handsome man beside her. Her hand rested gently on her pregnant belly, and she seemed to glow with happiness. Liam's heart skipped a beat. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of other guests, all of it dimmed until there was only Evelyn. "Liam?" Sophia's voice pulled him back. She looked at him with a hint of concern. "Are you okay?" Yeah, sorry. I just thought I saw something." Sophia tilted her head, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Oh, something or someone?" He hesitated for a split second. "No, just the sunset playing tricks on me, I guess." She laughed softly. "It is pretty mesmerizing, isn't it?" "Yeah," he mumbled, stealing another quick glance at Evelyn. She was leaning in towards her companion, her smile brighter than he remembered. Sophia noticed his eyes drifting and turned slightly to look over her shoulder. "What's so fascinating back there?" she asked lightly. Liam's cheeks warmed. "Oh, nothing," he said quickly. "Just thought I recognized someone, but I was mistaken." She raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Anyone I might know?" He shook his head, offering a tight smile. "No, just a fleeting thought." Sophia studied him for a moment before letting it go. As they resumed eating, Sophia tried to shift the conversation to lighter topics. The resort's beautiful decor, the spa treatments they'd booked for the next day. Liam nodded along, but his mind kept wandering back to Evelyn. Questions swirled in his head. Who was the man with her? Was she really pregnant? How long had it been? "Liam?" Sophia's voice broke through his thoughts again. He snapped back, feeling a bit lost. "Sorry, what was that?" She laughed lightly. "I was just saying maybe we could try that little Italian place by the beach tomorrow night." "Yeah, sounds good," he agreed. She gave him a searching look. "Are you sure you're all right? You seem distracted." He sighed softly. "I'm fine, just a bit tired from the flight. Maybe we should call it an early night then?" "Maybe that's a good idea," he admitted. As they stood up to leave, Sophia looped her arm through his. As they walked past Evelyn's table, Liam couldn't help but glance over. Evelyn looked up. At that exact moment, her eyes meeting his. Time seemed to freeze. There was a flicker of recognition, maybe surprise, but she quickly looked away, turning her attention back to her companion. Sophia felt him tense beside her. "Liam, seriously, what's going on?" She stopped walking, pulling him gently to face her. "You've been acting strange since dinner started. If something's bothering you, you can tell me." He hesitated, searching her eyes. I thought I saw someone I used to know. Brought back some memories, that's all." She softened. "Do you want to talk about it?" He shook his head. "No, it's in the past. I'm here with you now." "Okay," she said quietly, "but if you change your mind, I'm here to listen." "Thanks," he replied, grateful, yet conflicted. Sophia tightened her grip on his arm. If he was going to keep retreating into his head, she decided, she'd find a way to pull him back out, even if it meant confronting whatever ghost still haunted him. But as they headed back to their suite, the image of Evelyn's smile stayed with him, a haunting reminder of what once was and what could never be again. Back in their suite, the room glowed softly. Sophia moved quietly around the room, setting the scene with deliberate care. She poured them each a glass of wine and lit a single candle on the coffee table, its flickering flame adding a touch of intimacy. She wanted to erase the strange tension that had hovered over their dinner, to remind Liam why they had come here in the first place. "This is what we needed," her voice warm and encouraging. encouraging. No phones, no meetings, just us. Liam allowed himself to be led to the couch, sinking into the cushions beside her. He took a sip of his wine, the cool liquid grounding him as he glanced at Sophia. Her expression was open, hopeful, and it tugged at something deep in him. I know I've been distracted lately, he began. I've let work, other things, take over, and I've been putting everything else on the back burner, including you, and I hate that. Sophia studied him for a moment, her fingers grazing his as she set her wineglass down. It's not just work, is it? She asked gently. There's something else, I can feel it. Liam hesitated, the weight of her words pressing on him. Sophia, He stopped, exhaling sharply as he looked down at their intertwined hands. It's not easy to explain. Then don't, she said quickly, cutting him off. Don't try to explain it, just talk to me. Tell me what you're feeling. I'm feeling like I've been so wrapped up in everything else that I've lost sight of what really matters, he admitted, his voice rough. And I don't want to keep making that mistake. Not with you. Sophia's heart softened at his words, but she wasn't ready to let him off the hook entirely. Liam, she said, leaning in closer, I need to know that I'm not just something you come back to when you're tired of everything else. I need to know that you see me, really see me. Liam reached up, cupping her face gently in his hand. His eyes searched hers, and for the first time that night, he felt like he was fully present. I see you, he said quietly, but with conviction. You're the one thing in my life that feels real, Sophia. I don't want to lose that. Sophia let out a small, shaky laugh, the tension in her chest easing slightly. You're not going to lose me, she said, her hand covering his. Liam pulled her closer, his arm wrapping around her as she rested her head on his shoulder. Determined to show her how much she means to him, Liam suggests they explore the resort's private beach under the stars. Sophia, touched by the gesture, quickly agrees. The moon hung high in the sky, its silver light shimmering on the waves. The sound of the ocean was soothing, rhythmic, a natural melody that seemed to wash away the noise in Liam's mind, even if only for a little while. This feels like one of those movie moments, she said, her voice light and teasing. Are you about to propose or confess for being a secret spy? Liam chuckled, shaking his head. Neither, he said, his tone warm, but edged with something unspoken. I just wanted to do something special. She squeezed his hand. You didn't have to go to all this trouble, you know. Just being here with you is enough. They reached the beach, the sand cool beneath their feet. Liam spread out the blanket carefully, motioning for Sophia to sit. They sat in silence for a while, the waves their only company. Then Sophia shifted, her voice turning playful. Do you remember the first time we went to the beach together? You fell asleep in the sun and got the worst sunburn of your life. Liam laughed, shaking his head. I looked like a lobster for a week. You were so stubborn, Sophia said, laughing with him. I told you to wear sunscreen, but you said, nah, I never burn. Well, lesson learned, Liam replied, grinning. I haven't gone without sunscreen since. They exchanged stories and memories, their laughter mingling with the sound of the ocean. It felt easy, natural, like peeling back the layers of a shared history they'd almost forgotten. As they returned to their suite, the air between them felt lighter. The tension that had shadowed their trip momentarily lifted. Sophia lingered by the doorframe, watching Liam pour 2 glasses of wine. Tonight felt different, like we were finally on the same page again. She hesitated, her lips pressing together briefly. It's been a while since I've felt that. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the sincerity in her eyes made his chest tighten. I don't want to mess this up, he said quietly, his voice almost breaking. I don't want to lose you. Sophia smiled softly, the kind of smile that carried both hope and understanding. Then don't. We're here, Liam. We're not perfect, but we're trying, and that's enough for me. They settled onto the couch, their knees brushing as they sipped their wine. It wasn't long before Sophia's eyes fluttered closed, her breathing evening out as sleep claimed her. Liam stayed still, not wanting to disturb her, but as the silence deepened and the night stretched on, his thoughts began to drift. His gaze wandered to the ceiling, then to the glass of wine still in his hand. Evelyn's face crept into his mind unbidden, her smile, her laugh, the gentle curve of her hand resting on her belly. Questions circled like restless waves. What was she thinking? Was she as at peace as she seemed? And who was the man by her side? Marco? Was he the father of her child? The thought of it stirred something in him, a mix of regret and envy that he couldn't quite untangle. Liam let out a quiet sigh, lowering the glass onto the table. He glanced at Sophia, her face serene pain in sleep, and a pang of guilt struck him. She deserved this version of him, the one who was present, attentive, committed, and yet there he was, stuck in a past he couldn't quite escape. The room stayed silent. Liam sat there for what felt like hours, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him. The morning light seeped into the room, golden and warm, brushing over Sophia's face as she stirred beneath the crisp white sheets. The smell of freshly brewed coffee teased her awake, and her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she just lay there, soaking in the rare stillness of the morning. She turned her head and saw Liam at the kitchenette, his shoulders slightly hunched, one hand scrolling through his phone, the other holding a coffee mug. The sight was so domestic, so simple, that it brought a small smile to her lips. This was the Liam she missed, the quiet, thoughtful one, not the one buried in work and meetings. "Good morning," she said, her voice still heavy with sleep. She stretched lazily, the sheets slipping off her as she sat up. Liam turned, startled for a moment, then softened when he saw her. "Morning," he replied, walking over to hand her a cup. His fingers brushed hers briefly as he passed it, and she noticed how cold his hand felt. "Thought I'd let you sleep in. We've got a spa appointment in about an hour." She sipped the coffee, savoring the warmth that spread through her. This is good. You actually remembered how I like it," she teased lightly, glancing up at him. He chuckled, but the sound was muted. "It's not that hard to remember, Soph. Black, with just enough sugar to take the edge off." "Still," she said, her smile lingering as she studied him. "Did you even sleep?" she asked, the humor fading from her tone. He hesitated, his gaze flickering toward the window. "A little." Sophia watched him for a moment longer. She wanted to push, to pry open whatever wall he was building, but she held back. "Not now. Not yet." "Okay," she said finally, sliding out of bed and stretching again. "If you're not thinking about work, then I hope you got the next couple of hours planned out, because I'm officially putting you in charge of fun." Liam smirked faintly. "I'll see what I can do. But for now, go get ready. Spa in an hour." As Sophia disappeared into the bathroom, humming softly to herself, Liam's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen. It was a notification from the resort's newsletter. His thumb hovered over the message, but his eyes drifted to the terrace below, where Evelyn's table had been the night before. It was empty now, just a few chairs and a tablecloth fluttering in the breeze. He let out a sharp breath, almost angry at himself for the way his thoughts had wandered back to her. What was she doing right now? Did she even notice him last night? He opened his eyes and shook his head as though to clear it, setting the phone face down on the counter. The water in the bathroom stopped running, and Sophia's soft footsteps padded back into the room. "All yours," she said, her smile bright as she ran a towel through her damp hair. "Unless you're planning on skipping the spa and leaving me to enjoy it all by myself." Liam forced a grin, nodding as he picked up his coffee. The boutique shops were charming. They walked further into the winding row of shops. Liam lagged slightly behind as Sophia chatted with a vendor, his thoughts miles away. Turning a corner to follow her into the next shop, he stopped abruptly. "Evelyn." He froze mid-step, his breath catching as their eyes met. She was holding a delicate scarf. Her face shifted from surprise to a composed calm that he recognized all too well. "Liam," she said, her tone cool and steady. "Evelyn," he replied, his voice tight, controlled. Sophia emerged from behind him, holding a carved wooden dolphin. "Liam, what do you think of—" She stopped, her words hanging in the air as she took in the scene. Her brow furrowed, her gaze darting between Liam and Evelyn. "You must be Evelyn." Her voice clipped, the forced politeness barely masking the edge in her tone. Evelyn glanced at her. "And you must be Sophia," she said, stepping closer to Liam, her fingers brushing his arm possessively. "Liam's girlfriend." Evelyn's lips twitched into the faintest hint of a smile. "Nice to meet you, Sophia," she said, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. Her eyes flicked back to Liam briefly before she added, "Well, I'll leave you two to it. Enjoy the rest of your trip." Before either of them could respond, Evelyn turned and walked away, the soft rustle of the scarf in her hand the only sound breaking the heavy silence. Sophia waited until Evelyn was out of sight before rounding on Liam. "That was her, wasn't it?" "Yes," he said, his tone clipped. He avoided her gaze, staring at a display of necklaces as though they held the answers he needed. Sophia's jaw tightened. "And you weren't planning to mention that she's here, that she's pregnant, or were you just going to keep sneaking glances and hope I didn't notice." "It's not like that," Liam said quickly, finally meeting her eyes. "I didn't even know she was here until last night. But you've been acting weird ever since. So don't tell me it doesn't matter, Liam, because clearly it does." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "It doesn't matter, Sophia. She's part of the past. That's all." "Is she?" Sophia asked, her voice low but pointed. Her eyes searched his face, desperate for some reassurance. "Because right now, it feels like she's still in your head." Liam's throat tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, to ease the storm he saw brewing in her eyes, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he looked away, the silence between them heavy and suffocating. Sophia shook her head, stepping back. "You can't even answer me. That says everything, Liam." "Stop," he said, his voice quieter, almost pleading. "Don't make this into something it's not." "Then tell me what it is," she shot back, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself. "Liam, I need you to figure it out, because I won't be second to someone who walked away from you." He looked at her then, the pain in her voice slicing through him. "You're not second, Sophia. You're everything. He stopped, swallowing hard. "I just wasn't expecting this." "Neither was I. But I deserve better than being caught in the middle of your unfinished business." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. Evelyn sat on the edge of the balcony chair, her eyes fixed on the endless horizon. In her hands, a cup of tea had grown lukewarm, forgotten in her lap. Marco stepped out. He carried a fresh cup and handed it to her. "You're a million miles away," settling into the chair beside her. His tone was gentle, but the knowing look in his eyes betrayed his concern. Evelyn accepted the tea, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. "I ran into him," she said softly. "And his girlfriend. How did that go?" She let out a breath, shaking her head. "It wasn't much, just a few words, but it startled me." Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of the teacup, her eyes clouded. "I thought I'd buried all of that. Him, the past, the pain. Seeing him again, though, it felt like reopening a door I swore I'd locked for good." Marco leaned back, crossing his arms. "Does it bother you?" Evelyn paused, the silence stretching between them. "Not in the way you might think. I don't miss him, Marco. I don't want him back. But it surprised me, seeing him with her, laughing, smiling. It was strange. I couldn't tell if I felt relief or—" She trailed off, searching for the right word. "Sadness. Maybe both. For a long time, I thought we were building something unshakable, but all we really did was build walls around each other, around ourselves." She glanced at him, her hand drifting unconsciously to her belly. "And then one day it all just crumbled. Liam, he had this way of making everything feel like it was just slipping through his fingers. He could never see what he had right in front of him because he was always chasing something else, something bigger, something better." Marco nodded. "You're stronger now, Evelyn. You know that, don't you?" She gave him a faint smile, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and determination. "I do. But that strength, it came from everything I went through with Liam, the heartbreak, the anger, the guilt, even the forgiveness. I had to break to rebuild." Marco reached over, resting a firm but reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And you rebuilt into someone unshakable. Don't let his shadow steal even a sliver of that." "I won't." Evelyn nodded, taking another sip of tea as her thoughts shifted from Liam and the weight of their past to the life growing inside her. "This baby," she whispered, almost to herself, "is a fresh start. I won't let the past define what's ahead." That night, the suite was steeped in silence. Sophia lay curled on her side, her breathing soft and even. Liam, however, was wide awake. The bed felt too big, the room too still. He turned onto his side, watching the way the moonlight painted soft lines across Sophia's face. She looked so peaceful, so untouched by the storm brewing in his head. Yet even in her sleep, her hand was clenched against the pillow as if she were holding onto something, or maybe bracing herself for something to slip away. Liam sighed, the weight in his chest growing heavier. "She deserves better," he murmured to himself, barely audible. But the words didn't bring comfort. Instead, they felt like a confession, like he was admitting to some unspoken failure. He rubbed his hands over his face, trying to shake the thoughts loose, but they clung stubbornly, refusing to let go. He sat up, resting his elbows on his knees, his head hanging low. His mind drifted back to Evelyn's laugh, the glow on her face, and the hand she had rested so protectively over her belly. It wasn't jealousy that gnawed at him, at least not entirely. It was the questions, so many questions that had no easy answers. But it wasn't just Evelyn, it was Sophia too. Her smile, the way she tried so hard to close the widening gap between them. Liam felt his stomach twist as guilt pressed down on him. He didn't want to be that man, the one who hurt her by holding on to something or someone that no longer fit in his life. Sophia stirred beside him, her hand reaching out instinctively. "Liam," she murmured, her voice thick with sleep. "I'm here," he said quickly, lying back down. He slipped his hand into hers, squeezing gently. "Go back to sleep." Her eyes fluttered open, her gaze searching his in the dim light. "You okay?" "Yeah," he lied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Just couldn't sleep." "Liam," she whispered, propping herself up on one elbow, "if something's bothering you, talk to me, please. I'm here." He stared at her, his heart aching at the vulnerability in her eyes. He wanted to tell her everything, to pour out the turmoil and confusion and guilt that had been clawing at him, but the words felt too heavy, too tangled. "I know," he said finally, pulling her close. "I know you're here." Sophia rested her head on his chest, her hand splayed over his heart. "I just want us to be okay." "We will be," Liam promised, though he wasn't sure if he was trying to convince her or himself. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, letting her warmth and steady breathing ground him. The sun shimmered on the turquoise waters. Sophia adjusted her life jacket with a grin, her ponytail swaying as she turned to Liam, who was fumbling with his oar. "Honestly, Liam, you look like you're fighting the kayak, not paddling it," she teased, her laughter light and teasing. "I'm just out of practice," he shot back, his voice tinged with mock indignation as he splashed water, accidentally of course, near her boat. Sophia squealed, playfully paddling away. "You better not be trying to sink me, Montgomery," her voice echoing over the open water. Liam managed a smile, trying to focus on the moment, but his thoughts wandered. He shook his head, forcing himself to paddle harder, as though he could outpace the memories. Sophia noticed his effort and teased him gently. "Trying to race me, are you?" she said, a playful challenge in her voice. "Just keeping up," Liam replied with a faint smirk, though his grip on the paddle tightened. By the time they returned to the resort, Sophia was glowing from the day's adventure. Later, as they dressed for dinner, the polished elegance of the dining room awaited them. Sophia took her time, her hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, her flowing dress shimmering under the evening light. She caught Liam staring and smiled. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she teased, brushing lint off his jacket. The dining room buzzed with conversation and laughter, the soft notes of a piano weaving through the air. Their table was lively, and Sophia, ever the charmer, held everyone's attention with her spirited storytelling. She recounted an art show disaster that had left the crowd in stitches, her gestures animated, her smile radiant. But Liam's attention wavered. His eyes darted toward the entrance, and there she was, Evelyn. She walked in with Marco, her laughter carrying easily over the room's hum. Marco stayed close, his touch lingering on her back as they greeted other guests. Evelyn's presence seemed to fill the space effortlessly, commanding attention without even trying. "Liam," Sophia's voice cut through the haze. She was looking at him, her head tilted in gentle confusion. "Did you hear what I just said?" Sophia's gaze didn't move from his face, but out of the corner of her eye she caught the entrance of Evelyn and Marco. Sophia's eyes flicked back to Liam, catching the way his attention was magnetically drawn to Evelyn. "Oh," her voice carrying an edge. "I see." Liam blinked again, guilt flashing across his face. "Sophia, it's not what?" she interrupted. "It's not you watching her like she's the only person in this room?" The guests at their table exchanged awkward glances, sensing the shift in energy. Sophia turned back to them, her voice light but brittle. "Excuse me, everyone, I need some air." He watched her stand and leave, the flowing fabric of her dress catching the golden light of the chandeliers. For a moment he thought to follow her to explain, but explain what? The truth? That he couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn, that seeing her like this, so at peace, was unraveling something inside him? Instead, he stayed seated, guilt and frustration warring within him. He drained his glass in one swift motion, but the wine did little to dull the sharp edges of his thoughts. His eyes found Evelyn again, and this time she looked up. Their gazes locked for a brief, electrifying moment. Her expression was unreadable. It was as though she saw right through him, and the thought both terrified and enraged him. The laughter around him grew louder, the world moving on as if his inner turmoil didn't exist. He felt like an outsider in his own life, the noise and chatter around him fading into the background as the weight of his unresolved past bore down on him. Evelyn looked away, turning her attention back to Marco. The gesture, simple and unintentional, struck him harder than he expected. She was happy, truly happy, and it wasn't because of him. He exhaled sharply, the realization leaving an ache in his chest that he couldn't name. Sophia didn't return for the rest of the meal. Her absence left a void at the table that none of the conversation could fill, and Liam's guilt only deepened as the night wore on. Back in the suite, Sophia stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly. Liam sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, the weight of the evening pressing down on him like a storm cloud. "This was supposed to be about us." Sophia turned to face him, her eyes shimmering with frustration and hurt. "But all I've done is compete with a memory I can't even touch. I failed her." Sophia blinked, stunned. Her lips parted as if to say something, but no words came out. "Failed her? What are you even talking about?" Liam sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Our marriage ended because I couldn't let go of work, of control. I was so focused on building a life for us that I forgot to actually live it with her. And now seeing her like this, happy, glowing, with a life I'm not part of, it makes me wonder what could have been if I'd just been different." Sophia's face hardened, the warmth in her eyes replaced with a cold resolve. "And where does that leave me, Liam?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. "Am I just a stand-in, a distraction while you figure out your regret?" "No," Liam said firmly, stepping closer to her. "You're not. You're more than that. You're everything I want. I know I haven't been fair to you, and I'm sorry." "Sorry," Sophia laughed bitterly, a tear slipping down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, her voice breaking. "I need more than apologies, Liam. I need to know I'm not wasting my time." Liam felt his chest constrict, the thought of losing her cutting deeper than any regret he'd ever felt. "Sophia," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you." She held his gaze for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she turned back to the window, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then prove it." The next day was about to uncover the whole story. The morning started quietly, Sophia waking to the soft light filtering through the curtains. She turned her head to see Liam still asleep, his face softened in a way she hadn't seen in weeks. There was a time when just looking at him like this filled her with peace, with certainty. Now all she felt was a gnawing ache. She traced the outline of his face with her eyes, remembering the man who had once made her laugh until she cried, the man who had promised her the world, but now he felt distant, like a shadow of the person she'd fallen in love with. Her chest tightened as she wondered if she was holding on to someone who no longer existed. By the afternoon, Sophia had decided to take matters into her own hands. She wasn't going to let this trip be a complete disaster. She grabbed Liam's arm as he scrolled mindlessly on his phone. "Come on," she said, her tone firmer than usual. "We're going to the pool. No arguments." Liam blinked at her, startled, but nodded. All right, he said, setting his phone down. At the pool, Sophia ordered 2 cocktails, determined to make the best of the day. She leaned back in the cabana, her sunglasses perched on her nose. Liam tried to focus on Sophia, to meet her enthusiasm halfway, but his eyes betrayed him. Across the pool, Evelyn had appeared with Marco. Liam's chest tightened. His thoughts spiraled. "You know what?" Sophia snapped, sitting up straighter. "You've barely looked at me since we sat down. I'm right here, Liam, but your mind is over there." With her, Liam set his glass down, a frown creasing his brow. "Sophia, you're overreacting." Sophia's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Overreacting? Are you serious? You've been a ghost this entire trip, and now you don't even bother hiding it anymore." Liam shifted uncomfortably, glancing around at the other guests. "Can we not do this here?" "No," she said, her voice trembling but loud enough to turn heads. "We're doing this now because I'm done pretending everything is fine." Across the pool, Evelyn looked over. Marco leaned in, whispering to her, and she nodded, rising slowly to leave. Liam's eyes followed her, and Sophia caught it. Her voice broke as she said, "You can't even hide it anymore, can you?" "Sophia, please," Liam said, standing abruptly. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away, her chair scraping loudly against the tiles as she stood. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't need you to tell me you're sorry or that you'll fix this." Liam's heart sank, and for a moment he couldn't speak. The truth was tangled in his throat, too messy to unravel here under the judgmental gazes faces of strangers. Let's go somewhere private, he pleaded, his voice soft, almost desperate. Sophia shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. Why? So you can keep lying to me, so you can convince me I'm crazy when I know I'm not. Sophia, he said, stepping closer, but she stepped back, holding up her hand. Don't. Her voice dropped, quieter now, but no less sharp. You don't even see it, do you? How much you're still holding on to her, to whatever this is. Liam's mouth opened, but no words came out. Sophia turned and stormed off, her footsteps echoing against the tiled floor of the pool deck. He stood there, frozen, his hand still outstretched as if he could pull her back. Across the pool, Evelyn watches the scene unfold, conflicted. Marco places a hand on her arm. You don't owe him anything, you know. I know, she replies, her tone resigned, but I can't let this spiral. Evelyn approaches Liam, who stands by the pool's edge, visibly torn. Liam, she calls softly. He turns, startled to see her so close. Can we talk? She asks, glancing around. Somewhere less public. He hesitates, then nods. Evelyn led Liam along the shoreline, the moonlight casting a silver sheen on the waves as they lapped gently at their feet. When she finally stopped, Evelyn turned to face him, her arms folded protectively over her rounded belly. Her gaze was steady, but her voice cut like a blade. I don't know why you're here, Liam, she began, each word deliberate, but whatever you're looking for, it's not me. It can't be. Liam took a breath, his hands stuffed into his pockets. I'm not looking for anything, he said, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. Seeing you, it wasn't planned, wasn't it? Evelyn shot back, her eyes narrowing. Because it feels like you've been following me ever since you saw me. He shook his head quickly. No, it's not like that. Then what's it like, Liam? Her voice rose, her frustration barely contained. You have someone waiting for you, someone who clearly loves you. Go back to her. Focus on her. Liam looked down at the sand, scuffing it lightly with his shoe. It's not that simple. Why not? Evelyn pressed, her tone sharp. Why is it so hard for you to move on? His eyes lifted to her belly, the sight of her pregnancy striking him like a blow he hadn't prepared for. Is it his? Marco's? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Evelyn's jaw tightened, her arms dropping to her sides. Don't, she warned, her voice low and dangerous. That's none of your business. It feels like it is, Liam said, his voice rising. You're glowing, Evelyn. You're happy. And I'm stuck. Seeing you like this, he broke off, shaking his head as if trying to dislodge the words. Seeing me like this what? Evelyn demanded, stepping closer. Makes you wish we had this? That I could have been this woman for you? I don't know, Liam's voice cracked as he threw his hands up. Maybe I'm just realizing how much I lost, how much I let slip through my fingers. Evelyn let out a sharp breath. Liam, you didn't lose me. We lost each other. You want to make it about failure. But the truth, we weren't right for each other, and deep down, you know that. Then why? He asked, his voice breaking. Does it still feel like I failed you? Failed us? Her expression softened, though her stance remained firm. Because you're still carrying this guilt, this belief that you could have fixed something that was broken from the start. But Liam, my happiness now, this life I'm building, it has nothing to do with you. He looked at her, the weight of her words pressing down on him. For a moment, he didn't respond, but his eyes flickered to her belly again, and the question escaped him in a near whisper. If it's not Marco's, then how? Evelyn hesitated, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady. It's mine, Liam, mine alone. I chose this. He blinked, his brow furrowing. You mean a donor, she clarified, her tone firm but not unkind. Marco's just a friend, someone who's there for me without expecting anything in return. That's what I needed to figure out for myself after us, what it meant to stand on my own. Liam stared at her, the revelation settling like a stone in his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, struggling to find the right words. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. You really don't need anyone, do you? Evelyn gave a faint smile, though there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. Not in the way I used to think I did. That's what you need to understand, Liam. You've got to stop holding on to this idea of what could have been and figure out what's keeping you from moving forward. How? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. How do I let go? She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed, her voice softening. You already know the answer, Liam. You've just been too scared to face it, and you're not going to find it by chasing the past. Not me, not anyone. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm lightly. Let her in, Liam. If Sophia's the one, don't make the same mistakes you made with me. Be present. Be better. Her words hit like a wave, leaving him breathless as she turned and walked away. The moonlight caught the curve of her belly as she moved, a symbol of the life she was building without him. Liam stood rooted in the sand, the crashing waves filling the space where her voice had been. He tilted his head back, closing his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of clarity, faint but real. Sophia sat curled on the edge of the couch, her knees drawn up to her chest, her face streaked with tears. She stared at the floor, the soft light of the suite casting long shadows that mirrored the ache in her chest. The creak of the door made her look up sharply, her breath hitching. Liam stepped inside, his movements hesitant, as though he wasn't sure he belonged there anymore. Did you get everything you needed from her? Sophia's voice was low, trembling but laced with a sharpness that cut through the silence. Liam froze mid-step, his shoulders slumping under the weight of her question. No, he said, his voice quiet, almost ashamed. But I realized something. Sophia's arms crossed tightly over her chest, her posture defensive. And what's that, Liam? She asked, her tone brittle. That she's moved on? That you can't have her back? His eyes met hers, the vulnerability in them raw and unguarded. That you deserve better than this, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Better than me dragging you through whatever this is. Sophia blinked, tears pooling again in her eyes. So that's it? She whispered. You're just giving up? It's not giving up, Liam said quickly, stepping closer. Sophia, I don't even know who I am anymore. I've spent so much time running from my mistakes, from my past, that I've never stopped to figure out what I really want. And that's not fair to you. Not fair to me, she repeated, her voice rising. Liam, I've been here. I've been patient. I've given you space, time, everything. And now when I finally ask you to choose me, you tell me I deserve better. Liam ran a hand through his hair, his frustration with himself evident. I know it sounds like an excuse. Maybe it is. But I can't keep pretending I'm the man you need when I'm still stuck in my own head. Sophia stood, her bag already half packed on the dresser. She turned to him, her face a mixture of pain and resignation. You know what hurts the most, Liam? She said softly. It's not even that you're letting me go. It's that you don't even see what you're letting go of. Her words struck him like a blow, his head lowering as he tried to gather his thoughts. Sophia, he began, but she held up a hand. No, don't, she said firmly. I've been praying about this, Liam, asking for clarity, begging for answers. And you know what I've realized? Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. I can't save you. Only you can do that, and maybe you need time to figure it out. But I can't keep losing myself while I wait for you. Liam's throat tightened, his heart pounding. I don't want to hurt you. Well, congratulations, she said bitterly, a tear slipping down her cheek. You already have. The weight of her words settled heavily between them, the silence stretching until it became unbearable. Finally, Liam nodded, his voice soft. I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm so sorry. She exhaled shakily, picking up her bag and slinging it over her shoulder. I hope you find what you're looking for, Liam, she said, her tone soft but resolute. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, he watched as she walked to the door, pausing only briefly before stepping out. The door clicked shut behind her, and with it, the last tether of the life they'd been trying to build together. The next day, Evelyn and Marco prepare to leave the resort. She spots Liam watching from the lobby as they check out. For a moment, their eyes meet, a silent understanding passing between them. She gives him a faint nod before turning away, her hand resting on her belly. Liam stands by the window of his suite, watching the waves crash against the shore. Sophia is gone, Evelyn is gone, and he's left alone with his thoughts. For the first time in years, he allows himself to feel the weight of his choices, and for the first time, he begins to think about what it means to truly let go. A few days later, Liam lingers in the resort lobby, waiting for his car to arrive. The tropical ambiance that once felt like an escape now feels heavy, weighted with memories of Sophia, Evelyn, and the emotional turmoil of the past week. As the staff bustle around him, he spots a family checking in, their laughter filling the air. He observes the father lifting his child onto his shoulders, the mother smiling warmly warmly, and a pang of longing shoots through him. The concierge approaches. "Mr. Montgomery, your car is ready." Liam nods but doesn't move right away. His eyes drift toward the ocean one last time before he stands and heads to the exit. Before leaving, Liam drops a sealed envelope at the front desk. It's addressed to Evelyn. Inside, the letter he had written during one sleepless night. The words are heartfelt but succinct. "Evelyn, seeing you again reminded me of the man I was and the man I want to be. I'm sorry for the ways I failed you and for the love I couldn't hold on to. You seem happy and you deserve that. Thank you for teaching me what I couldn't see before. Take care." The concierge promises to deliver it discreetly, and Liam walks out of the resort feeling a sliver of relief. Later that evening, Evelyn sits on her balcony, her baby bump framed by the glow of the setting sun. Marco hands her the envelope, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "From Liam," he says simply. Evelyn takes it, her fingers lingering on the seal. She opens it carefully, reading the words with a quiet intensity. A mix of emotions crosses her face, nostalgia, sadness, and a faint trace of closure. Marco studies her. "Are you okay?" She folds the letter, setting it aside with a serene smile. "I am now." On the way to the airport, Liam stares out of the car window, watching the palm trees blur past. For the first time in years, his mind isn't racing with business deals or regrets. It's still. He pulls out his phone and deletes Evelyn's contact. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he types a message to Sophia. "I hope you find everything you deserve. Thank you for showing me what love could be." He doesn't expect a reply, and that's okay. Months later, Liam sits in a modest office, a world away from his high-powered corporate life. He's begun volunteering at a legal aid clinic, using his skills to help those who can't afford representation. It's not glamorous, but it's fulfilling. A photo of Sophia taken during their happier times sits on his desk. It's not there out of longing, but as a reminder of what he learned about vulnerability and connection. Evelyn cradles her newborn son in a quiet nursery, her heart swelling with love. Marco sits nearby, rocking gently in a chair, the two of them sharing a peaceful silence. As she looks down at her child, she feels an overwhelming sense of purpose. The past feels like a distant chapter, one she's grateful for, but one she's glad to leave behind.
This story reminds us that letting go of the past is the first step to finding peace and building a better future. Liam's journey teaches us the value of self-awareness, forgiveness, and embracing change. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more powerful tales from the True Crime Studio. Thank you for watching, and may your life be filled with clarity, love, and endless possibilities. See you in the next story.